from CBS Sports.
High drive, center field, hit the wall, grand slam. This is magnificent.
Got a fantasy question? Email fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. Get ready to win your league.
Where fantasy becomes reality.
Now here's Frank, Scott, Chris, and Adam.
Hey there. Welcome into our latest mock draft live stream. This time a 12-team head-to-head categories league. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by CPT Christopher Paul Towers and Scott White Jr. And joining us today, one of the most supportive people in the industry. It is Chris. You also know him at Baseball Pods on Twitter. What's going on, Chris? Happy to have you join us here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. This would be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you can follow Chris. I mentioned at Baseball Pods on Twitter, and you can find some of his work, redraft and dynasty, over at baseball-pods.com. Plus, we've got the fantasy baseball podcast bracket coming out soon, so looking forward to that as well. Chris, anything else that you'd like to promote before we actually jump into things here?
No, the tournament will be interesting this year. We've got a full field of at least 64 teams. Waiting to hear from a few other podcasts because we're making sure everybody wants to be included this year that is included. And I guess we'll try to time it depending on how it feels like we're going to have a baseball season. Maybe it'll give us something to do while there's no spring training games.
I mean, what a mess, right? The MLB and the Players Association met again here on Tuesday, February 1st, and it still seems like they're pretty far apart. So we need more meetings. We'll see what happens. But as of now, it looks like it is inevitable that pitchers and catchers and spring training will be delayed. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer. What's going on, Scott? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm doing great. Just ready to get this draft going here, Frank.
That is correct. And Christopher Towers, I'm going to refer to you as Towers throughout the entire podcast live stream here because we have two Chris's, and I don't know. I feel like it's going to get messy. What's up, man?
That's good. I think I'm used to being Towers. You know, when you work in like sports and sports related areas, everybody pretty much goes by their last name or some kind of nickname of their last name. I know there are people in CBS who refer to Scott as Blanco. So I'm used to Towers. Towers is comfortable for me.
All right. And again, as I mentioned, this is a 12-team head-to-head categories league, and we're using the standard Yahoo lineup, which is one of each infield position, 3 outfielders, 2 utility bats, and then pitching is pretty interesting. We have 2 starting pitchers, 2 relief pitchers, and then just 4 pitcher spots. So you can choose whether you want those to be relief pitchers, starting pitchers, whatever you'd like. And we do have 5 bench spots. The categories are standard as well. The 5x5 batting average, home runs, RBI, and stolen bases. And then for pitching, we have ERA, strikeouts, saves, wins, and whip. We're drafting this as if it's a daily lineup league where you need at least 25 innings minimum per week. Scott, I should have asked you this beforehand. Are we drafting as if it's 1 win per week, or your record keeps advancing based on, however much you win or lose the categories?
I believe I don't remember. I don't remember what the Yahoo standard is, to be honest.
I believe the standard is however you win, that's what your record becomes. So we'll just go with that.
I hate that. That's the worst way to play fantasy.
Are you saying like it's 1-0 versus like 6-4?
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
I mean, Yahoo. I don't play a lot of Yahoo baseball, but the basketball is definitely category like 6-4, 8-1, or whatever.
I hate it. It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. A win's a win, in the words of the immortal Dom Toretto.
Yeah, and I think that opens up more possibilities for punting too, because actually, I guess either way, right? Even if it's 1 win, like you just have to win a majority of the categories, right? So I don't know. We'll talk about it throughout the course of the podcast. Where are people drafting in this podcast? Well, I have the first overall pick because Scott finally came to his senses. He hooked me up a little bit. Every other podcast, I've had the last pick so far. So thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Yeah. Scott will be drafting 4th overall. Towers will be drafting, what is this? That will be 7th. And then Chris, Baseball Pods, will be drafting 10th overall. And who else do we have?
The fix is in from the start, Frank. The fix is in from the start. I don't know about this.
It's good. We're all spaced out. It gives us all an opportunity to talk about our picks, so on and so forth. I see my buddy Dave Mendelson is in here as well. He's drafting 12th overall. Who else we got? Zev Trom is 11th. Just want to quickly shout out everyone else who's in here. Corey Pieper, RJ White, and we have Ray Atherton Nick Mamikos. Should have wrote this down beforehand. What a professional I am. Chris Mitchell. And then Tim Kanek is drafting second overall. Apologies if I ruined anyone's name there or just did not pronounce it correctly. All right, Scott, I think that we're just about ready to jump in. What do you think the over-under is for how many times I say the word marmol today on this stream?
Well, I would have said it at 1, but that's out the window now, isn't it?
Well,
it could still push.
We're going to say it at least 2 times because the marmol strategy is a very popular one, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point throughout the course of this live stream. All right, Scotty, fire it up. You did exactly that. Now, I have the first overall pick. I probably should have thought about who I wanted to draft because I knew that. I like to punt steals in this format, but Fernando Tatis is the first overall player. Yeah, I know. That's why, right? Like, I'm not going to let that affect my pick. So I'm just going to take Fernando Tatis. He's my number 1 overall player. But I will just say there's something very soothing about just punting steals in this format and just not having to worry about it at all whatsoever and just loading up on as many 4 category contributors as you possibly can. It's a very fun way to draft. Second overall, it is Ronald Acuna. So that's probably the highest we've seen him drafted in any mock draft this offseason. And let's go to Chris Baseball Pods here. Chris, what do you think about Ronald Acuna? Sounds like originally his timetable was he was going to be ready for May 1st. That's what he was aiming for, but we're getting all these updates and he looks pretty good so far. Where would you draft Ronald Acuna?
I'm really not coming close to him. It depends on the league, to be honest. Like in a league where I'm putting down some serious money, I'm probably not touching Acuna until the second round, probably mid-second round. I think he's probably going to miss around a month. And the other thing is you just don't know if he's going to run when he comes back, if he's going to be fully healthy. So I think he doesn't need to run to be super valuable to the Braves. So I'd just be a little more cautious on him. And I think he's still my number 1 player overall in Dynasty moving forward. But right now I'd want to know a little bit more before drafting him in the first round.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Ronald Acuna, Scotty has him 18th overall in category leagues. I have him at 13, and Chris Towers has him at 13 as well. What else do we have here? Ronald Acuna goes second overall. I mentioned that. Trey Turner. Scotty, you go with Vladimir Guerrero. Does this mean you will be trying to punt steals in this draft today?
It might. I mean, I agree that this is the format to do it if you're going to do it. But I've talked about it before. I'm taking the 0 SB strategy this year. No intentional prioritization of steals. So
this is Scott's NIP strategy.
Yeah, but I like calling it 0 SB. Thank you. I'm not going the NIPS route. But
I think we should really just talk about your NIPS instead, Scott.
Scott, it's okay to talk about your NIPS.
I don't like where this is going. So.
I love it. I love it. So. All right, let's see where Scott goes after he takes Vladimir Guerrero. 5th overall, we see Juan Soto and then Bo Bichette and Towers. You take Jose Ramirez, and you won't have to worry about that dreaded third base position for the rest of your draft. Frankly, I think it's an absolute steal that you're able to wind up with him at 7th overall. Whoever has their audio turned on, I think it's Baseball Pods. We're gonna.
It is probably me. Sorry.
I do appreciate that.
There you go.
Chris, I'm sure you're pleasantly surprised to get Jose Ramirez at pick 7.
Yeah, I mean, when you're picking 7, I think you probably resign yourself to like a Bryce Harper or Shohei Ohtani. Kind of I don't know if you would call those consolation prizes, but there is probably a top tier, and for one of the top players to fall outside of that top 6, I think I'm very pleased about that. Jose Ramirez, basically one of the best 5 category players in fantasy. The batting average can occasionally be, it's usually more like average in average, but, we did see him hit 292 in the short season. If he hits 275 with the other 4 categories that he's going to give you, there aren't many players better in fantasy.
8th overall, we see Bryce Harper go, and then Corbin Burns. Shohei Ohtani goes to Chris Baseball Pods, and then Mike Trout goes 11th overall. Scott, are we assuming that Shohei Ohtani is just one player where you could play him both as a hitter and a pitcher here in the daily format?
Yes, because that's how CBS Sports leagues are set up. I don't believe Yahoo leagues are set up that way, but this is just meant to be a close facsimile. Okay, we're not going to rebuild the whole CBS player database to placate the Yahoo audience, because they really should just be signing up for CBS, right?
Oh, well, you're right about that. I mean, this is a rabbit hole of a discussion that we've gone down multiple times, and I'd be happy to go down again, but I wish that we can just reap the benefits of Shohei Ohtani every single day. And based on that, Chris, baseball pods, I probably should have taken Shohei Ohtani first overall if I can use him as a hitter or pitcher whenever I want, honestly.
Well, that's why I took him there. I think you told me it was a daily league. It's like if I can move him in and out of pitcher and batter, I mean, I think he could arguably be the most valuable player in the game. So I was very happy to get him there.
Absolutely.
That's still that is probably true, but I will point out the math is, we used to say in this format you could get all his pitching stats and all his hitting stats, but that's not true anymore because now he also hits on the days he pitches.
It's true. It's true.
That is fair. Yeah.
But I just feel like even if he gives you 10 wins and I'm not punting steals, I like the steals he gives you. He is a risky player, I think. In if you can't play him daily, I think his value goes down. Some people are taking him in the first round. I don't know if I'll really be able to do that come draft season and take him over a steadier player like Bryce Harper or others. I'd probably rather have them in a standard draft, but in a daily moves league, I don't know how you leave them on the board.
At pick 12, we see Mookie Betts and Kyle Tucker together go to our buddy Dave Mendelson. Garrett Cole goes off the board at pick 14. And then Chris Baseball Pods takes Walker Buehler and Freddie Freeman, 16th overall. RJ White is on the board. And then we'll have our guy CPT up here ready to draft as well. And there it goes, Rafael Devers. So you didn't have to worry about that one, Chris, because you already have yourself some Jose Ramirez. Do you know who you're going to take? Can I throw it to you while you make your pick, or should we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you want us to stall until you make your pick and then you go.
No. We talked about starting pitchers last week, and I mentioned I think Hero RP or Hero SP is the way to go. Get your one anchor pitcher, and I think even in this format that makes sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and draft Max Scherzer, obviously on the older side. He's switching teams, but same division that he's pitched in for a long time there with the Mets. And look, as long as he doesn't get too much Mets on him, I think he's going to be the one of the best pitchers in baseball again. So love to be able to build a pitching staff around a guy like that.
Well, Towers, I've got to call you out because your rankings say that you have Jacob deGrom ranked higher.
Yeah, I'll switch that up.
All right.
I'm aware of it. I do have Jacob deGrom ranked higher. I'm starting to think about it, and I think the risk of things going wrong for Jacob deGrom is a little too high right now. Not even right now. It's not like if I see him pitch in spring training, I'm going to think there's less risk. So, as I go through the next few weeks and, I'm kind of on vacation right now. I'm just doing the podcast. So once I get back, I'm going to do a big rankings update, and that'll be one of the things that changes is Jacob deGrom moving down just a little bit, two spots at starting pitcher probably.
All right. I appreciate it. I appreciate the honesty, the transparency there. After you took Max Scherzer, we see Brandon Woodruff go, Jacob deGrom, Luis Robert to Scotty. I love the pick. And then Ozzie Albies goes 22nd overall here. Scotty, why did you go with Luis Robert over maybe one of the pitchers that are?
Yeah. So I went off ranking a little bit here. Just kind of wanted to try it. I think it's unlikely in any kind of categories format, head-to-head or roto, that Luis Robert is going to make it near the end of round 2 like I took him here. And, normally I probably would take my first starting pitcher here, but he just kind of stood out as clearly the right hitter to take in that moment. And so I'm gonna go a little weak at starting pitcher in all likelihood because of it. And I just curious to see how it plays out.
All right.
Very anti-white. Very anti. I always associate you, Scott, with go get those pitchers.
Yeah. It's it's a mock.
It is. Yeah. Let's try some things out and see what happens. I gave myself a little fist pump here because I really did want Zach Wheeler. So I'm with you, Chris. I do want to grab one of these hero starting pitchers and make sure that I get my ace. I'll talk about it as we go further, but typically in this format, I like to do a pseudo Marmol strategy. I like to have 2 aces and then load up on some good relievers later. But yes, I do like to have at least 2 pretty damn good starting pitchers. So I'll take Zach Wheeler. My rankings say that Starling Marte is the top available hitter. Now I have Fernando Tatis.
Oh, we can look at Frank's draft board.
That's right. You definitely can. You can steal my cue like Scott
That's
did.
what I've been
in
drafting off the entire time.
It's totally fine. This is fun because you have Tatis, so you could toggle in between outfield and shortstop as the draft goes on, depending on what you want and need. Do I actually want to take Starling Marte? I probably shouldn't punt steals because I already have Fernando Tatis. Yeah, I mean, I'll take Starling Marte. He's the highest ranked on my board, and I think he's probably good for one IL stint per season. That's, he's probably going to miss 20, 25 games at some point throughout the year, but really strong batting average, 15-ish home runs, strong steals, likely to lead off or bat second for what I think is going to be a really improved Mets lineup. So, I feel like I've covered pretty much all the bases so far in terms of those two offensive players. And then I have my starting pitcher with Zach Wheeler. And Shane Bieber goes off the board here as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, does Scott pull a starting pitcher off the board a little bit just to make sure he gets one? We'll find out right now, because after Shane Bieber went, Marcus Semien goes, and Scotty, you are up.
So I am, aren't I?
Now you have the dreaded question, the one that we've had all offseason, Scotty. Sandy versus Julio Urias.
Wow.
Well, I don't have to take a pitcher here, Frank.
Oh no, that's true. I thought you're
the previous tier just ended with Wheeler and Bieber both going since my last pick. I would have been debating those two instead of Luis Robert. It's the start of a new tier now, and a fairly sizable one, which, obviously you need multiple starting pitchers. It doesn't mean I can't take from it. But if I've started down this path, I might continue down it for one more pick, at least one more pick, and take Cedric Mullins here.
Ooh, yeah.
Oof. All right, Scotty leaning into the hitters here. He's got Cedric Mullins so far. Let's remind everyone who you've got. Cedric Mullins, Luis Robert, and Vladimir Guerrero. All right, so got some speed, got some power. Yeah, covering all the offensive categories there so far. Before we get any further into this live stream, if you are watching, we have 100 people watching right now. We appreciate all of you for hanging out here. Smash the like button, please. I've been informed that if we don't wind up with at least 100 likes by the end of this live stream, that Scott will not be on the podcast next week. And honestly, Scott didn't even know that.
I didn't know. This is news to me.
I'm breaking news right now.
Who issued
I
this
heard
mandate?
I heard he might get arrested.
Yeah, yes. There's a lot of moving parts right now. I can't give you the details.
We're in negotiations with the authorities.
That's right. Afterwards, we'll talk about it. But we've got to get these likes up. At least 100
those
by
likes.
the end of this live stream. We're starting position previews next week. We need Scott. So please help us out here.
On the flip side, I heard that if we get to 150 likes, then Scott's going to do an entire episode in his Michael Caine voice. So,
the entire
big
podcast.
promises.
but by the way, like you're leaving money on the table. I went over to Cameo earlier, and Michael Caine, the actual Michael Caine, is not on Cameo. I feel like Scott White is Michael Caine. I would pay like $20 for that.
Yeah.
All right.
I can pass that. I'm sure nobody would catch that. No.
Let's make that happen. All right. So smash that like button if you haven't already. After Scott took Cedric Mullins, we see Julio Urias go off the board, Austin Riley, and CPT. You wind up with Aaron Judge here. So you have Judge, you have Jose Ramirez, and you have Max Scherzer so far. How are you feeling about that? You are muted, sir.
Classic Chris.
And you're back.
I mean, look, at what point in the draft do you not feel good about every pick that you've made?
It's right.
Definitely not the first 3 rounds. I love my first 3 picks. They're awesome players. That's what's always going to happen. I wish I had been able to get a guy with some speed with my second pick. I was hoping Cedric Mullins would have fallen there. He ended up going a couple spots before I had the chance to draft him. Not sure he would have gotten there even if Scott hadn't taken him. But Aaron Judge is the next player on my board. I don't worry too much about injury risk. Aaron Judge, he's, one of the best power hitters in the game. You're going to get a ton of counting stats from him in that lineup. So, yeah, that's the way I went.
All right. Well, let's catch people up here. After you took Aaron Judge, we see Whit Merrifield go off the board, Yordan Alvarez, and Xander Bogaerts goes to the other Chris. So far, let's pull up your team and see what you're working with. You've got Shohei Ohtani, who you can use as a utility bat, and you have Walker Buehler as a starting pitcher, and then you have Xander Bogaerts. You wind up going Bogaerts over Trevor Story, Tim Anderson, Lindor. Why did you take Bogaerts over those guys, Chris?
I think he gives you all 5 categories. He's a little light on stolen bases, but Anderson actually doesn't steal that many bases. They just don't run enough. I think he's got the speed too. They just don't run enough in Chicago for him. So, I mean, Xander's got an underrated batting average floor. He's in a loaded offense. He was having an incredible start to last season before being dinged a little bit. And I think he's as good a hitter. He's like one of the better hitters in baseball. So I also think you want to make sure you get one of the top 6-7 shortstops. I think they're in a league like this. There's a bit of a dip after that. And I think you want an elite shortstop.
Now,
Yeah,
that's a unique take, I feel like, because I think shortstop goes about 13 deep in terms of elite or almost elite, and hard to tell exactly what order they're going to finish in.
I think once you get past Dansby, for me it's a little bit of a I think they're good players, but I think there's a standard deviation of talent difference. And I look at the third base is definitely the thinnest position. Shortstop is the deepest, but I don't know. I like getting like a shortstop that plugs in all 5 categories.
And one thing to think about with the depth of shortstop is that can matter a little less in a league like this. Like the depth of shortstop is really, really important in a 15-team league where you've got to get your middle infielder plus your starting shortstop. And if you go 13 deep, you're going to still feel pretty good about it. You can really go like, I think Willy Adames, isn't he 23rd at the position in ADP right now in NFC? Like, you can still end up with pretty good shortstops,
right,
in your lineup. Whereas in this
13th, but 13th in my rankings is like Francisco Lindor and Tim Anderson. It's not it's not like Willy Adames or Dansby Swanson.
Yeah. I was looking at my rankings the other day. I have 17 shortstops ranked in the top 110 picks. So,
no.
I mean, that is just unheard of. When was the last? I don't think shortstop has ever been this good. And it just in general, the position and where it's kind of headed, just from like a dynasty perspective as well. There are so many shortstops. It is crazy right now. Like, the position is absolutely loaded. So
I think Scott's right about that, but I think a lot of those shortstops we would be playing at second base. So like Trey Turner and Marcus Semien. And Jorge Polanco, all those guys, I think are getting up playing at second base.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
that's
true. Some dual eligible guys there make it look even deeper. Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's also Javier Baez, there's Jazz Chisholm, who you could play at second base as well. So I think it's a good point there. Let's catch everyone up at the 3-4 turn. Dave Mendelson takes Corey Seager and George Springer. Then we see Byron Buxton go. No Byron Buxton for you, Chrissy Poo. And Teoscar Hernandez goes off the board to our buddy Baseball Pods here. Sandy Alcantara all the way to the 4th round, pick 40. Man, I love that. RJ White takes Lucas Giolito, and then CP Tate. You go with Robbie Ray. This is not common for you, Chris. 2 hitters and 2 pitchers in the first 4 rounds. I don't know. Were you kidnapped or something? Are you
no, it's just that starting pitchers aren't really going all that heavily in the early part of this draft. And so, I tend to like to, zag a little bit. And in this case, I think Robbie Ray falling to this point, it's not like a steal or anything, but the upside that he showed last season, if the changes that he made can stick, I just think, I mean, we've seen how high the upside is. And this is one of those where it's like when Jose Ramirez had his slump and he was talking about how he was trying to beat the shift and that screwed his swing up. And we had a very, very reasonable explanation for why he got better. And in Robbie Ray's case, I think the explanation of, not trying to aim quite as much, not trying to like hit his spots with the fastball, but just kind of throwing it in the zone and trusting the stuff. I think that's a pretty good explanation for why his control got so much better, because his stuff has always been great. And so I do buy the breakout with Robbie Ray.
Oh, Scott. I mean, I know I didn't have him in my queue, but man, you hit me hard there with Salvador Perez. I don't usually take catcher early. I'm not usually the first person to do it, but look, if he lasts to the 4-5 turn, I'm about it, man. I will take Salvador Perez there. So I think that's a really strong pick for you.
I'm probably going to take him anytime he's available in round 4, because I think he just had the best season for any catcher since Johnny Bench, 3 times as many home runs as the number 2 catcher in anybody's rankings, JT Realmuto. So, he delivers even 2/3 of that. He's probably going to be the clear number 1 at the position. And I think it's especially valuable in a league with head-to-head lineups where there are so few hitter spots to fill. You need maximum impact from every position. I actually think I would rather pay up for Salvador Perez in this format than a traditional roto 2-catcher format, even though we tend to think of 2 catchers as, meaning you need to go harder after catcher. I don't think that's necessarily true, just because there are more hitter spots to contribute your stats in those formats.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Scott. And there's also in those formats there's an evening of the field, if you will, given how many people have to field catchers. So I think that's a great pick here, and I think that in this type of shallow league, that's where you want to make sure you get a differentiator at these positions.
And look, we're going to talk about it. Our catcher preview is coming up soon here, but I can't remember a time that catcher was as far ahead of the rest of the field as Salvador Perez is now. Of course, there's a chance that he regresses, but you look at all the underlying numbers, everything lines up with Salvador Perez. He played 161 games last year. I mean, that is just unheard of for someone who is catcher eligible in fantasy baseball. So I think he's just like a unicorn right now for fantasy baseball. And yeah, if he lasts this long, I think it's a fantastic pick. Mike, who I was looking at taking, basically just all 3 guys right ahead of me: Salvador Perez, Aaron Nola, Paul Goldschmidt. Those are all the players that I was looking at. So I had to pivot a little bit here. I wanted to take a starting pitcher. Nobody that I necessarily love. I thought about taking the first closer off the board. Didn't want to do that either. So I double tap hitter. I go with Pete Alonso, much to the dismay to Chris Towers. So I do like that. And then Randy Arozarena, who I know Scotty does not like very much. But if we're looking for 2020 production, I know StatCast numbers are a little bit scary. But yeah, I do like Randy. I thought about my guy Lindor, but I've already got Tatis. And so could have finagled some things, but overall, go with Randy Arozarena and Pete Alonso. Lindor goes next, and then Chris Sale goes. And Scotty, you are back on the clock.
I think I'm taking another hitter.
Oh, wait,
5 hitters. 5 hitters to start the draft.
Scott, I mean,
I feel like I'm in Bizarro world.
I know.
This happened in our last mock draft too, where you just took all the prospects. I feel like, you've kind of just been jumping around with the strategies here in the mocks. I mean, that's what they're for, right?
Yeah. I think, part of it, like I've said, is it's a mock. And so, there's less pressure to get it right. I kind of just want to see how it goes. But it's not just do something wild for the sake of doing wild. I feel like this is the format where maybe having an advantage at starting pitcher is least valuable, because of course you have the relief pitcher strategy. But even just beyond that, when you're talking about reducing scoring to like a week at a time, I feel like ratio stats can so easily get messed up in over a 1-week sample. And 50% of what a starting pitcher is being scored on are ratio stats, ERA and WHIP. And all it takes is one guy to sink the ship in a given week. So I really want to make sure that I am getting advantage, that I have an advantage to the degree I can at every hitter position, like a clear advantage at every hitter position. And I feel like Jose Altuve, who I just took here in round 5, is one of those guys who can really distinguish himself at the position and is kind of being undervalued considering.
Yeah, look, he's not going to provide much in terms of steals, but you look at everything else that he provides, and he's there. 4 categories for him: solid batting average, power from the second base position, runs and RBI. Even if Carlos Correa leaves the team, which seems likely at this point, I think the Astros lineup is still going to be pretty damn good here. After you took Jose Altuve, we see Nolan Arenado go off the board, Max Fried, Nick Castellanos to Chris Towers, Josh Hader, and Liam Hendricks. So we get the 2 elite closers in a tier of their own. They go here in the 5th round. Will Smith goes to Baseball Pods here, and then Trevor Story. I think that's a pretty good value on Trevor Story, getting him 59th overall. Chris, you mentioned that you liked the pick when Scott took Salvador Perez. I would assume it's for the same reasons, that you want to have an advantage over the rest of the league when it comes to that catcher position.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a good chance. I think Perez, he's going to regress a little bit, obviously, towards the mean, and there's a chance that Will Smith, if we have an LDH, takes him over this year. I view him as kind of a coin flip in terms of value. I think Will Smith's arguably could be one of the most valuable hitter on the Dodgers and just obviously one of the best at the catcher position. So I was hoping no one else would take him while we were talking about how great catchers were.
All right. Eloy Jimenez last to pick 60, the last pick of round 5. And I believe that Dave, like you, Scott, does not have a single starting pitcher. No, he does not. Let's see here. Corey Seager, George Springer, Mookie Betts, Kyle Tucker, Eloy Jimenez, 4 outfielders in a league where you only start 3. Now, we do have 2 utility spots, so you can kind of shuffle some things around there. And then he takes his first starting pitcher here with Jack Flaherty. So, all right, he beat you to the punch. Let's see how long it takes Scotty to wind up with a starting pitcher here.
Let's see who's still available when my next pick comes up.
I don't know.
And I think it's worth acknowledging that the draft so far has been a lot less pitcher focused than we're typically used to. I think we've got 4 teams who have 1 pitcher and 1 with 0 pitchers. So I mean, when you get interesting.
When you get me in a draft with 0 pitchers through round 5, that alone is going to make it so fewer pitchers are off the board. Yes, but no, you're right. I'm not the only one taking that approach. Clearly,
yeah. Look, this is a unique format, right? And we'll talk more about that. Actually, tomorrow's actual podcast is going to be recapping this entire draft, so we could dive in a little bit more, see what the strategies were, and figure things out that way. But this format, it's a blend of roto and head-to-head points, obviously, but it's just unique in terms of, there's so much variance from week to week in terms of those rate stats, Scott, as you mentioned, and really just in general, like from a week to week basis, like who knows what's going to happen in baseball. So it's pretty unique in that way. And so there's different strategies and you can punt things. And so we'll see how that kind of shakes out throughout the rest of this podcast. Chris, Baseball Pods, you are on the clock, sir, and you wound up with Chris Bryant. So you have Walker Buehler, you have Ohtani, who's pitcher eligible. So you've got like 1.5 pitchers, and then the rest of your players are hitters to this point.
Yep, and I'll be honest with you, I feel like I reached a little bit there on Bryant, but I do like him. I'm a fan. I think he's, he's going to find somewhere. He's going to have a good floor. I was debating between him and Bregman. Third base is really thin. Bregman just, with the injury, is he ever going to get all of his power back? It's not clear. I think he's still a good value at this point. But Bryant, to me, he's not the MVP every year, so I think he kind of gets overlooked. And I also like the ability to flip him back between third base and outfield. It's a nice position eligibility flex.
All right. Yeah, I was going to ask if the third base position, just being what it is this year, if that factored into your decision, and it kind of sounds like it did there here in the 6th round. We see JD Martinez go, Lance Lynn in the 6th round. That seems like good value. All right. Chris Towers. You have to be trolling us at this point, right? I mean,
I'm zagging. I'm zagging. When there's 5 teams in the 6th round who only have 1 starting pitcher or 1 pitcher total, or 4 pitchers between the 5, I guess would be the best way to phrase that. Yeah, I'm gonna start taking the pitchers when they fall to good values, and I'm a little wary of Robbie Ray and Kevin Gausman being 2 of my first 3 pitchers, but given the sort of 1-year nature of their breakouts, but I believe in both of them. I believe in the breakouts and what we've seen and the skill changes. So I don't know.
Ray is so unique. Like, there are only 2 pitchers, and I'm sure there are more, but 2 that come to mind. And I'm not saying he is them, but like when you think about just people that threw really hard, got tons of strikeouts, and just needed to figure out the control, the 2 names that come to my mind are Randy Johnson and Matt Scherzer. And it's like, and if I think there's a non-zero chance Robbie Ray has that kind of career for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and the thing that's a little tough is he is 30, and so it's one of those. Did he just figure out in his age 29 season as a pending free agent, like all those things coming together? It's an interesting question, and I think it's sort of unanswerable one. But there's never really been a doubt about Kevin Gausman and Robbie Ray in terms of the talent. Gausman, again, it's kind of a similar situation where the explanation for why Gausman's been so much better over his last, 250 or so innings is that he did the thing we've been saying he should do for the last 7 years, which is just throw his splitter a whole bunch.
Yep.
It's always been a great pitch, and the rest of his pitches have been, have improved as a result of that. But he led the league in innings pitched, or Robbie Ray led the American League in innings pitched last year. Kevin Gausman, going back to 2020, he's been a huge strikeout guy. The control's been good. And I just, the strength of that splitter is so obvious to me that I think it's, as long as he is able to avoid the blister issues that have kept him from throwing the splitter in the past, as long as he's able to keep the confidence in that pitch, I think he's going to be very good. It's another situation where it's a late career breakout, smallish sample size, but I'm willing to buy in.
All right. Well, Chris going with the 3 starting pitchers, 3 hitters through 6 rounds. Then we see JT Realmuto go off the board. Tyler O'Neill. Scotty finally gets his first starting pitcher with Charlie Morton. And man, who would have saw that pick coming? I mean, never would have predicted Scott taking
that was part of the thinking too with the Altuve pick early in round 5 is like, just judging by Morton's ADP, nobody else would pick Morton that early. I wasn't confident he'd make it back to me in round 6, but it at least seemed like a possibility. And he ended up being the last pitcher in that tier for me. So I'm thankful he did. If not, I probably would have had to settle for like Logan Webb, like you just took at the end of round 6, Frank.
I mean, don't say it like that, Scott. Settle for Logan Webb. I mean, we're talking about Logan Webb here. The guy is pretty legit. Hopefully. We'll see what happens. Jose Barrios goes after you. Take Charlie Morton, Brandon Lau, and then I double tap here, Logan Webb and Alex Bregman, starting to see that third base position dwindle down a little bit. And this is probably one of those scenarios where I pull Alex Bregman up the board a little bit just because with the first pick, I don't know that he's going to make it all the way back to me at the 8-9 turn. So I want to ensure that I get a pretty good third baseman here. And I believe that'll be the case with Bregman, even though we just spoke about him on today's podcast. If you listen to it, some things to worry about in terms of the power, but overall, I still think that he'll be a pretty valuable fantasy asset this year. Freddie Peralta goes, and then Blake Snell and Scotty. I thought about it. I thought about taking Adalberto Mondesi. I mean, I guess
I was going to do it.
If there's a format to do it right, like head-to-head categories, you throw him in there when he's healthy. He's going to give you a ton of speed, obviously. You still only have one pitcher, but geez.
Yeah.
That offense.
Yeah, it was between him and another pitcher. But yeah, no, I mean, I didn't feel great about taking Mondesi with Bregman still on the board. So I'm glad you took Bregman, Frank. It kind of gave me permission to take Mondesi. But I love him in this format because, again, you're going a week at a time with these stats, and you could invest in a bunch of 20 steal guys, and just the way they deliver their stolen bases, the way they're distributed over the course of the season, it may not make the week-to-week impact you're looking for. But Mondesi, at least when he's on the field, he's probably single-handedly going to win you steals for the week. He's just that prolific in that category. I mean, the fact that I have Mullins and Luis Robert as well makes it even that much more likely that for every week that Mondesi is healthy, I feel like I've pretty much assured myself a win in stolen bases for that week.
All right. After you took Adalberto Mondesi, Jose Abreu goes, Frankie Montas, and there he goes. The troll, Chris Towers. He's at it again. Luis Castillo. Now 4 starting pitchers through the first 7 rounds of the draft. But for real though, Chris, like, at what point, I understand zigging when everyone's zagging, but at what point do you start to worry about, okay, maybe my offense is too far behind everyone else if you're leaning this far into starting pitching?
I don't worry about it too much. There's still quite a few rounds left. When you're building a team, you're gonna have some downsides everywhere. Like you have to make sacrifices, and every draft is different. And I think it's just chasing values is still a good idea. Obviously, you do have to build a team out with that strategy, but I just think I got to this point, and I look at the top hitters left, and I don't like any of them as much as I like Luis Castillo, or at least not for the team build I've got, because you've got Giancarlo Stanton, Brian Reynolds, Jesse Winker. Well, they're all outfield only, and I've got 2 outfielders already. So, I don't necessarily want to just grab my third outfielder when I've got other holes in my lineup. I don't like the other players at those positions. So that's, I'm okay with it. I'm fine with the decision-making process here.
All right. Javier Baez goes 80th overall to RJ White. Then we see Carlos Correa and Chris, baseball pods. I hope 2 things here. I hope that you actually really do like Jazz Chisholm, but at the same time, I kind of hope that maybe you only took him just so that we can hear you and Scott and Towers kind of just all argue over Jazz Chisholm. Since, we did Sleepers, Breakouts, and Busts last week, and these guys just completely, they poo-pooed on Jazz Chisholm. So tell us why you go with him here, 82nd overall.
Well, I'd rather bet Baez, obviously, but Chisholm gives you, multi-position eligibility. I know he's got a hit tool issue. It might not work out, but he also might be 30-30 this year. And I think he's got a certain amount of swagger and confidence, and that's kind of the X factor that reminds me a little bit of Javi Baez when he was younger. So it's, once again, he's the guy that had 30 steals on the board left that I could count on the most. Like I said, the safer pick would have been Baez for me, but I also like the second base shortstop eligibility again from him. And in a 12-team league, there's going to be value on the waiver wire. So I'm more likely to take a swing at a guy like this that could, if he hits like Mondesi, he's phenomenal. If he doesn't, I think you replace him.
Yeah, and I will say, I think the more shallow the league is, the more likely I am to take a shot on a Adalberto Mondesi or a Jazz Chisholm, because the replacement value is just so much better, right? It's like if you're playing in a 15-team league or an AL only or NL only, at that point, like you take that kind of risk and the replacement value is a lot worse. So this is kind of like that middle ground where it's not too deep, where you could afford to take that risk, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, Frank. Impact is the word I want to stress in this draft. There are so few lineup spots to fill that you need impact from everyone. Mondesi is going to give you impact. You hope Chisholm will. I understand the calculation with Chisholm. For me personally, I think the odds of him actually delivering on all that upside with a 30 season are pretty low, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility. And if I'm wrong about it, then it'll end up being a great pick.
Yeah, and I don't even, like, when I'm picking him here, I'm not even thinking 30-30. I'm just thinking give me 15-30. It's the 30 with a passable batting average that you want.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And too, you bring up the swagger, right? Like, we don't talk about that a lot. It's not something that we can quantify, obviously, but this kid has a lot of confidence, right? So if he could just stay healthy and keep his head on straight, like we saw it in the first month last year, the final five, not as great, but yeah, he was dealing with some injuries, so there's a chance that was affecting his output there.
One of the concerns I have, just to be honest, is like that he plays that way, and he is one of those players that gets hurt a decent amount because he lays out for everything. So he may be one of those guys that needs to figure out how to protect his body a little bit more, because when he's the face of the franchise, he lays out for everything. He goes 100%, and kind of like when we saw with Bryce Harper when he was younger, running into the walls, going after everything. You want him to kind of maybe go half a step slower so you're on the field for twice as many games.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Bryce Harper early in his career, he would miss time just doing like wacky stuff. I appreciate the effort, obviously, but we need you on the field. We need Bryce on the field. We need Jazz on the field as well. Finishing out round 7, we saw Joe Musgrove and Jonathan India go, and then starting round 8, we see Alek Manoah, Brian Reynolds, Yu Darvish. Oh man, it's got to be coming up on my pick here. Emmanuel Clase, Raisel Iglesias. So 2 more closers off the board. Chris, #Brand. I love it. Giancarlo Stanton with the pick. We see Jorge Polanco, Ryan Presley, Justin Verlander goes to Scotty, Cody Bellinger, Shane McClanahan, and I'm sure Tim did that because he thinks that he sniped me and he knows how much I love Shane McClanahan. I was not going to take Shane McClanahan, I swear. Scott, the combined age of your 2 starting pitchers is like 150. How do you feel?
Yeah. Things thinned out at starting pitcher really quickly. I blame Chris. And don't feel great about Justin Verlander as my number 2. That being said, when you draft one pitcher with your first 7 picks, what do you expect to happen? So we'll see how many. Like we're through that group of 30 now that I think have the potential to be, to potentially compete for a Cy Young Award. The top 30 going through Verlander, and then now we're getting into that upper middle class that I keep talking about. That's very deep. So I'm gonna primarily my pitching staff is going to be made up of that.
Scott, right. I'll be honest with you. I love that upper middle class. I love that second tier this year. There's so many people there. It's like, in thinking about 15-team leagues, like which I've been mostly drafting in, I'll be honest with you. I was leaning more towards pocket aces and, the following your lead and Toby's league in terms of being pitcher heavy the last few years. But this year, I just love all those guys in that second tier. I love Musgrove. Yep. I love Darvish. I love Montas. There's a whole.
That's actually the tier above for me. Like I'm counting those guys named in the 30.
Yeah.
This tier that I'm talking about includes like Trevor Rodgers and Adam Wainwright and Shane McClanahan, even like Nathan Eovaldi, Sean Manaea. I feel like there's a group. They're 31 to 55 in my rankings, and I could just go in literally any order with them.
So much value there.
Yeah.
After Shane McClanahan went, I lied. I probably would have taken Shane McClanahan. So good pick there. I take Edwin Diaz. I mentioned I do like to get at least one elite closer in this format, head-to-head categories, and I'll break it down as we go further into the draft. And then, man, first pick around 9, just nobody standing out to me here. Not really into the Christian Yelich thing. I'm worried about the back injury. Jesse Winker has had trouble staying on the field as well. I think the Reds lineup is going to regress. No Nick Castellanos there. Mitch Haniger's fine. I think he probably takes a little bit of a step back as well. And then look at all these shortstops, right? It's like I've already got shortstop. Bobby Witt would have been a fun pick. I like Willie Adames, but it's I've already filled it out with Fernando Tatis. It was tough, man. There's no one that really stood out to me. I do like Trevor Rodgers quite a bit, and I think that he could take a next step and become an ace for fantasy. So I do have 3 starting pitchers. I have 1 closer, and then I believe I had the other 5 picks have been hitters so far. After that, we see Max Muncy go, Kyle Schwarber, and Scotty, you are back up. Do you want to take another 40-year-old starting pitcher? I think Adam Wainwright is available.
Clayton Kershaw's still out there.
Yeah, he still is. I see that. Gosh, I'm not loving my choices here, to be perfectly honest.
This is weird, right? Like round 9. I feel like there should be better players available. What's going on?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not that there aren't good players. It's just
They're
that
hitters.
they all seem equally good. I'm just going to go with the one I have ranked highest, which is Jesse Winker.
Ooh, you got auto-drafted, Scott.
Well, yeah, but
How dare you?
I just moved him into my queue.
All right, so Scotty goes with Jesse Winker and then Christian Yelich. So again, there's names here, but what are the expectations? I think that's the conversation that we have to have, and I have some question marks about those hitters. Kyle Schwarber, he's been in the news. Apparently, the Rockies are interested in Schwarber. That would just be an absolute boon to his value if he winds up in Colorado. Let's see what else is going on here. Jordan Romano, another hopefully closer off the board. Toronto can still make a move. Romano was awesome last year. As of now, I think if the season started tomorrow, which I wish it did, I think Romano would be the closer for Toronto. Chris Towers, you are on the clock, buddy. What are we doing?
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out.
We're all having the same issue, man. Round 9, it's
point.
like this is the round of doom. If you want,
It's not necessarily that there aren't players I like. I think maybe one of the issues that like Scott might be running into is just that I think that a lot of the top hit players available are hitters. If you look at our average rank, the top players available pretty much exclusively are hitters. I think the top 10. And so that gives me a little more flexibility, but it's just more a question of who do I take now, who might come back. And so I'm going to take a risk that I can get a difference maker at catcher and take Dalton Varsho.
Ooh. So I don't think that's so much it. It's just like the high-end hitters and the high-end pitchers are all gone. And it's just there are still quality options among both hitters and pitchers, but they're just how do you distinguish between them? Mm-hmm. Who do you prioritize here when you see, there's, a dozen other outfielders who look just as good as him?
Well, one thing I can say is if you don't mind filling up a utility spot, you could just do the most profitable thing anyone's done in fantasy baseball for the last 8 years and take Nelson Cruz.
I thought about him. It was between Nelson Cruz, Christian Yelich, Mitch Haniger, and who I ultimately took, Jesse Winker.
If you talk about, like we were talking about earlier, you want difference makers. Well, I don't know if Mitch Haniger has the same difference-making potential as those other 3 guys, but Winker, Yelich, and Cruz especially could all be, some of the best players some of the best hitters in fantasy. It wouldn't be totally shocking if any of those 3 were top 25 hitters next season.
If I had another 30 seconds to decide, I think I would have gone with Yelich. The thinking being, okay, this is a shallow 3 outfielder league.
Yeah.
I'm not confident in Yelich regaining MVP form, but if clearly I'm not paying too much for him, and clearly there will be fallbacks if he doesn't.
I like Cola Bear in the YouTube chat. Shout out to Cola Bear here. He goes, I like Frank's team minus the Rosarena. All right, well, that second part, we'll leave that out. And then Scott's pitching is on life support. You're not wrong. We'll see how Scotty's pitching staff winds up here overall. For those watching us live on YouTube, we appreciate you. Again, smash the like button if you haven't already. We're at 59 likes. We have 135 people watching. That means, I don't know, quick math, about 75 of you have, no, more than that. Whatever. Anyway, a good amount of you have not liked the video yet. So please do like the video. If we don't get to 100 by the end of this stream, Scott will not be on any of the podcasts next week. So please help us out. We've got to make this happen. Let's catch everyone up on.
You're really just hurting yourselves.
Wow. All right, Scott. Jeez, you don't think we can carry the show without you? Man, it's kind of messed up, dude. Dalton Varsho goes to CPT. Carlos Rodon. Anthony Rendon goes. Dylan Cease to our buddy Baseball Pods here. Joey Votto, Reese Hoskins, a bit of a first base run. Aroldis Chapman. And we are out. And by we, I mean me. I am out on Aroldis Chapman this upcoming season. Chris, Baseball Pods, you took Dylan Cease, one of the most popular breakout starting pitchers this year. And I was debating myself, Trevor Rodgers versus Dylan Cease. If you had that decision yourself, who would you go with, Cease versus Rodgers?
I'd go with Rodgers. What you did, I think Cease has. I think Rodgers just has to do what he did over the course of a season, whereas Cease still has to make some slight improvements that I think are within his capacity to make it to the next level. But the massive amount of strikeouts there are so delicious at this point in the draft. I think Cease is a fun guy to have, and along with Buehler and Darvish, just give me and Ohtani a really good solid pitching base.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the strikeout upside for Dylan Cease is just absolutely ridiculous. I have a fun stat on Dylan Cease. From June 1st on last year, the sticky substance crackdown, Dylan Cease led all qualified starting pitchers with 12.6 K per nine. So guy is absolutely filthy. Got to work on that control and hopefully get the walks down, which would help the whip. But man, the strikeouts.
I will point out something I always have to point out with a guy like Dylan Cease, historically Robbie Ray as well. K per nine maybe makes them look a little bit better than they actually are. Because they face a lot of batters per inning, because they walk a lot of guys.
True. Got to look at strikeout percentage.
And they also don't throw many innings.
I've noticed, Towers, that the consensus in the industry has kind of been on other podcasts and just around, like, people have focused more on strikeout percentage. I haven't yet kind of made that transition here on this podcast or live streaming or anything, because I feel like our audience might be so used to K per nine. It's just something they've heard for so long that I don't really want to confuse people. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I'm just making an assumption on that.
No, I think this is a common philosophical discussion when it comes to fantasy podcasts and writing and anything like that. Really, any sports writing is you have to communicate with your audience in a language that they can understand. And so, if your audience doesn't have a frame of reference for what a good K percentage is relative to a good K per nine, like we know 10 K per nine, anything above that is pretty good or really good. Although it's becoming less and less good every year, but that's fine. K percentage, it's, maybe people are less familiar with it. Average is around 22.5% the last couple of seasons. It's been steadily rising, as has K per nine, and so a really good one would be anything above 26 to 27%, let's say. An elite is 30%. So, that's kind of the context, I guess, that's worth discussing.
And Cease was what? I think he was 31.9.
Yeah, he was still very, very good.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. His slider is already one of the best pitches in the game. Scott, I can tell that me and you, we're going to butt heads a lot this year in drafting, because this just keeps happening, man. Like, you're taking guys like, I don't have a queue today because I worry that people who are also in this draft might be watching the live stream and stuff. So I have a mental queue going on. And Scott, you are just ripping my mental queue apart every time.
Well, Chris told me to take Nelson Cruz last time.
That's why I said no name dropping. Jeez.
I got sniped for the second straight pick. I was all about Pablo Lopez and Nick Mimikos. Took him right before but last time it was Kyle Schwarber who I was aiming for, and that's why I had to settle for Jesse Winker instead. But now I got Nelson Cruz.
I'm petrified. I am scared off of Lopez. Just seems like I'm just worried about that injury. I mean, I think he's a tremendous talent, but man, I'm a little scared.
His changeup is one of my favorite pitches in baseball. I love watching that thing. But yeah, it feels like he's just been like something's gone wrong for him like 3 years in a row. where we've really been interested in him, and then it's just like, just a little bit.
Well, the durability issue is, I mean, he has yet to put together an ace workload, but I like that start by start. You can count on him for 6 to 7 innings, and if he could ever get past that health situation, I think I actually have him in my breakouts column for this year because I feel like that's all he's missing.
Fair.
Really, his numbers are comparable to Sandy Alcantara, who everybody considers a top 12 pitcher now.
Totally. It's just I get scared off by the health, and
you got me back.
Frank. Miami is they've got so many arms down there. I know it's just like it feels like anything that goes wrong, they'll shut him down for a while.
I also wouldn't be shocked if he gets traded. I think Miami still has a trade to make.
At least one.
So it's possible. Not that would necessarily be a bad thing for him. But
they just have so much depth at starting pitcher. I'm in another draft and hold league right now. I just got my second share of Jesus Luzardo this offseason. I'm not giving up yet. I mean, Chris, we just talked about him the other day. It just seems like people are just prematurely. I mean, the ADP is around 300 right now. I know how bad he was last year. It was kind of a weird situation. He broke his hand. He got killed in Fortnite or whatever, and he got pissed off and he broke his hand as a result of it. But I'm not throwing in the towel on Jesus Luzardo, and they have a lot of pitching there. So there is a chance Pablo Lopez is traded. I understand the injury risk. I think on a per inning basis, though, he's going to be really good. But I understand the concerns that you have with him. Let's see what else happened in
You got me back, Frank.
Yeah, I got to catch everyone up.
Pick.
There was a lot that happened in round 10 that I haven't mentioned yet. So let's see. Clayton Kershaw, Kenley Jansen, Grandal, Contreras. I would have taken a catcher at my pick here. But once Contreras and Grandal are gone, I look at that as the end of a tier. So I wasn't going to pull anyone else up the board yet. Towers takes Willie Adames. Love the pick. Mitch Haniger and then Pablo Lopez. Scotty, you take Nelson Cruz. You snake. How dare you? Joey Gallo, Giovanni Gallegos. And then I go with Will Smith and Bobby Witt. Saves are a category in this league. You can easily punt them. That's totally fine. Me personally, I kind of like to lean into getting the strong ratios and the strikeouts along with the saves. So I see the end of a tier coming up there with closers. So I have Will Smith and Edwin Diaz on my team. And then I start this round with Bobby Witt, slot him in at shortstop, move Tatis to the outfield. And I'm assuming that's the pick that you wanted, Scott.
Yeah, no, I'm the only one without a shortstop. So I tried to get greedy there, get Cruz, and then get Witt on the way back. But, it turns out a few people expressed their dissatisfaction when you took Bobby Witt. So I guess everybody was gearing up to take him as their utility guy. I don't know.
Woo! Let's go.
Little too clever for my own good this time.
What I would have done, Scott, if you didn't take Cruz either, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to double tap one oldie and then, obviously.
We're going to trade you Cruz for Witt because I think I'd do that knowing now that greed doesn't pay off.
No, we can't do that. And you can keep your Ranger Suarez too, because I don't want him either. Blake Trinan goes at pick 122. If the season started tomorrow, he would be the closer for the Dodgers. Noah Syndergaard, then Ranger Suarez for Scotty. Nathan Eovaldi, Tommy Edman, and CJ Cron goes to Towers here. Someone else that I was considering myself. You know what's so interesting, Chris, about Cron is he had a ridiculous August. Every other month was kind of mediocre. So I think he's a good player, but I kind of do worry about consistency, week to week in a league like this, where obviously it's a head-to-head format.
Oh, I don't actually think he's all that good. I mean, we've seen CJ Cron for long enough. We're going on his 8th season in the majors, or 9th season in the majors now, and he has these stretches where he looks really good, but he hits the ball really hard and he plays for the Rockies. And so I kind of think there's just a pretty high floor there. And I don't know how predictive inconsistency is from year to year. And so I think the way it's going to work out is when he's got a lot of home games, he's going to be really good. And when he doesn't have a lot of home games, he's probably not going to be that good. And so, maybe in a daily lineups league, you got to juggle him a little bit. But, at the end of the day, I think the numbers are going to be pretty good.
All right. After you take Cron, we see Framber Valdez, Jake Cronenworth go off the board, and Franmil Reyes. So our third, and I believe really the final bat that's utility only that really is like a standout contributor in this format, and that is Franmil Reyes.
There's only 2 now, unlike last year.
Yeah, and Otani, obviously. So there's Otani, there's Reyes.
Right. I wanted to lock up all the utility spots that I could.
Makes sense, man. Franmil Reyes, maybe it's because he's util only. I just feel like he's undervalued every year. Like, the guy's going to hit 35 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the young Nelson Cruz.
Yeah, like the batting average isn't going to be great. You know, you wish he put the ball in the air a little bit more, but man, like when he's out there, he's hitting bombs. So I'm all about Franmil Reyes as well. DJ LeMahieu goes, Zach Gallen and Logan Gilbert there at the turn. Let's see how Mendy's pitching has turned out, because I know he waited quite some time to jump on his pitching, much like Scotty did here. So all right, he has Flaherty, Gallen, Manoah, Logan Gilbert, and Aroldis Chapman. So all right, some young guys with upside there. Maybe not a lot of innings, but yeah, kind of
less important in this format.
That's fair.
You know, you don't need the raw innings totals.
Why are you out on Chapman so hard, Frank? Just because you're a Yankees fan like I am and you can't stand watching him pitch?
Yeah, that's part of it. No, I don't really know who to expect this year. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, the final 4 months last season, like a 4.95 ERA. I think it was like, you know, a 1.5 or 1.6 WHIP. It's just like, how much of that was he affected by the sticky substance crackdown, right? So the walks were brutal. For what it's worth, the velocity was still there. Swinging strike rate was still perfectly fine. But yeah, I kind of worry about just like, where is Chapman at this point in his career, and that they have a very capable backup in Jonathan Loaizaga. So yeah,
a couple. Chad Green can close too if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you're a Yankee fan, Chad Green. The guy is so frustrated. Like, honestly, good riddance, man. Like, let him go somewhere else. He's got nasty stuff, but he gives up home runs in like the worst possible moments. It's very first. That's my Yankee take of the day. Get rid of Chad Green. Josh Bell goes in round 12 here. I think it's perfectly fine value. Corey Knebel goes to you, Baseball Pods. Jared Kelenic, and then Ian Anderson goes, and we hear a gasp from who was that? Was that Towers?
That was me. I was hoping Jared Kelenic. No, I wasn't going to take him this round. I was hoping he would come back.
I was debating him and Bobby Witt, by the way. So.
Yeah, so just waited a little too long for that. So that's fine. That's
I don't have a second baseman, and I'm pretty sure the position is like terrible at this point. Oh yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it's not good.
All right, so I mean that's why we do these mock drafts, man. Let's now I know next draft I've got to put a little bit more emphasis on second base, because
there are some decent options that I wouldn't mind having as my second baseman in a roto league where you know you're going to go deeper in the middle infield spots. But yeah, it's hard for like Ty France to make a big impact in this format.
Gosh, yeah, I mean it's just I like Luis Arias. He's in the breakouts column. I like him more as like a middle or corner infielder. Do I want him to be my starting second baseman? Probably not, but I don't know. I might have to settle a little bit later on.
I'll say this. I don't know if I said it on the second or the middle infield tiers episode, but if you just look at the batted ball numbers, Luis Arias looks like a slightly better version of Jonathan India. Jonathan India walks more, but Luis Arias hits the ball harder than Jonathan India. He has a very similar pull-heavy fly ball profile that's going to let him, you know, get the most out of what he has. I wouldn't be shocked if Luis Arias was better than Jonathan India this season. India might steal more bases, I guess, is the one difference, but it's like 6.
I think that's a great bet to make. I think India's, he's got the great hair. He's sexy. People love him. He's got the rookie of the year. So, then you got boring Luis Arias, who you get confused with like 3 other people with similar names. Yeah. Doesn't have a full-time position. So, yeah, absolutely.
You know who India kind of reminds me of? Dating myself a bit here as a Marlins fan, but reminds me of rookie of the year Chris Coughlin.
Don't put that evil on him.
I mean,
Chris Coughlin had an awesome rookie season.
Yeah, he did. And then what happened next?
That's my concern with Jonathan India. I think I'm talking myself more and more into being out on him.
And some people are all in on it. There's definitely like a lot of the wise guy money is on India taking it in another step, but I have not found myself with him anywhere.
Yeah,
it does help in OBP leagues, and sure. I mean throughout the minors, it was obvious like this guy's going to get on base a lot. It's just, is he going to hit for enough power? And playing in a small park, pulling the ball in the air a lot, that's a way to maximize modest exit velocities. Hopefully he can do it again.
I worry he could go the Kevin Biggio route.
All right, I'm coming up here.
We've got a question in the chat there, Frank, around Seiya Suzuki.
Oh, Seiya Suzuki. All right, yeah, we got a few questions in the chat. I actually want to pull up. So after I make my picks, we'll take a look at some of those questions.
Tim wanted to. Okay.
What did Tim want to do?
Tim wanted to draft him.
Seiya Suzuki.
But we have a long-standing rule at CBS: you cannot draft players if they are not with an organization.
Oh, all right, yeah, that makes sense as of now. All right, I'm gonna take a catcher. I'm gonna get my boy Kybert Ruiz, help out with the batting average a little bit. Not really sure where the power is gonna be at his first full season with the Nationals. I mean, he's had up and down power production in the minor leagues. I absolutely think that he's going to hit for batting average. He makes a ton of contact, and I expect a lot of line drives. I think work his way up to the middle of the lineup for the Nationals there. And the question is, what do I want to do with this other pick? So I think I need another hitter. Actually, I've got 3 starting pitchers, 2 closers. Yeah, I would like another hitter. Nobody really screaming out to me. Eddie Rosario is a good value every year. We just don't know where he's going to play yet. So I think that kind of factors in. All right, I'm going to go with, maybe I need to make this adjustment in the rankings too, but I'm going to take Lourdes Gurriel, another one. I mean, he doesn't play in Coors Field, but a lot like CJ Cron, he's inconsistent. I mean, he has like months at a time where he just looks lost, and then other months where he looks amazing. Obviously, I like getting some exposure there to the Toronto Blue Jays lineup, one that I think will be amazing once again, even without Marcus Semien. So grab Lourdes Gurriel there. I think I need a little bit more power on my team, so that's probably what I'm going to focus on moving forward here. After I took Lourdes Gurriel, we see Adley Rutschman, the next catcher off the board. All right, so we had some questions. Actually, you mentioned one was about Seiya Suzuki. Scott answered that one. There was one earlier from Justin. Here, let's talk about this. Tell us more about the punting steals approach. I've never bitten the bullet and actually punted steals convinced me. Now, this is only in a head-to-head categories league where you only need to win more categories than your opposition. So you can afford to punt 1 or even 2 categories. I probably wouldn't punt more than 2 categories if you can afford to. But punting steals, I mean, it's pretty easy, right? Like you take 4 category contributors, you focus on batting average, you focus on power, you grab as many of those bats as you possibly can. Names like Pete Alonso get propped up, Nelson Cruz we spoke about earlier, even a Fran Reyes, someone like that. You just draft as many of those as you possibly can, and you really just don't have to worry about steals. Scott, I know that you don't
make the trade-off.
That's
really the most basic way to say it is you don't make the trade-off for steals. Because with the exception of a handful of players, you're going to have to make some serious trade-offs when you're targeting steals. You're going to have to usually power, but often batting average as well. So that's the biggest thing is that you just get the best hitters.
For sure, yeah.
Just
don't have to put an emphasis on it, Scott. I know like you're doing more of the 0 SB strategy this season, but I think even more so in this format. It makes a lot of sense. Like you just don't have to put an emphasis on it, and you can just focus on
I mean, punting traditionally means like getting none of, like accepting last place in the category, which is why I'm differentiating what I'm doing, calling it 0 SB, because my whole point is you don't need that many to finish in the middle of the category. Like that's the other side of scarcity. Yeah, steals are scarce. But that also means nobody's going to have that many, except the guy who gets Adalberto Mondesi, and if he stays healthy for long enough to have him finish a distant first in the category, maybe the guy who invests in Starling Marte. But apart from like those 2 or 3 players that are going to set those 2 or 3 teams apart, most everybody is only going to have 4 or 5 dozen steals.
Fair enough. Yeah, we got another question here, just a follow-up. Would you take a player like Luis Robert if you were punting steals? Like Robert's probably, I would project him for like 15 steals. I think it's fine. Whenever I've done it in the past, I have actively looked to avoid steals. Like I have just drafted players that like if I'm in the early rounds, like a Vladimir Guerrero or a Freddie Freeman, guys like that, where like they're just going to excel in counting stats. That definitely could be Luis Robert as well. But obviously, I would expect someone like Freddie Freeman to have even more runs or RBI than Luis Robert. So that's the route that I would go down. After Adley Rutschman went, we saw Justin Turner Dansby Swanson, Chris Taylor. I probably should have taken a second baseman, right? Like, why didn't I think about that? Shane Boz goes. Patrick Sandoval to Chris. All right, Chris. Our conversations are affecting you here. I like that. I like that. Ryan Mountcastle, Tyler Malley, and then Aviseo Garcia to Baseball Pods. We'll get to that in just a second. But CPT, I asked Scott yesterday when we started the podcast, who is this year's Robbie Ray? He gave the same answer as me, Patrick Sandoval. I almost said Pablo. Love Pablo, but no.
The other Sandoval in our lives.
Yeah. So yeah, look, Towers, we're all over Sandoval, man. We're happy about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, he kind of pitched that way for a decent stretch last season. He's got some really good pitches, especially that changeup. We talked about it on Monday's episode. I got in my own head 2 rounds earlier, and I took Craig Kimbrell, and I was like, well, I want to get a good relief pitcher, and then it's just like, why? What's the point? In this format, like, you don't really need any closers. You can get a bunch of good relief pitchers.
Pick. I like that.
It's a fine pick, but I
almost voiced it at the time. Oh, it's a good pick.
It's a fine pick. It just, I don't know.
Because he's in theory anyway. I know Craig Kimbrell's been he's had his ups and downs.
He should be an elite closer,
but in theory, he's going to be like a ratio, like bananas ratios. And the only reason he lasted to round 13 or wherever you took him is because he's not in line for a closer job yet. But we all suspect he will be traded into that role. The White Sox have pretty much said as much.
For me, it's just, I don't know if relief pitchers really matter in this format, or at least closers matter, given how fungible they are, given how much they fluctuate from year to year, given how often they lose their jobs. It's just it was a point where I felt like I had to draft for need, and that's usually not good. Like it's you don't need saves like in a roto league where you need saves because you don't want to be last place.
You're matching up your reliever versus an opponent's reliever. You got Kimbrell, who could get 120 strikeouts over the course of the season, and somebody else has I don't know, Dylan Floro. I mean, complete opposite end of the spectrum, but like that 60 strikeout advantage there.
But in this format, you probably
and
shouldn't have Dylan Floro on your team. You should probably just get a really good ratios guy. That's my view, at least, or Sparp, because at that point, Dylan Floro is a one category contributor. Like maybe he's okay in ERA and WHIP, but the samples are so small that it's not really helping you all that much, and one blow up can really hurt your week. So you'd be better off going. I mean, I don't want to say names, but there are Sparps out there. There are really good elite relievers who aren't closers who could become closers. And it's not like whatever. It's a fine pick. Craig Kimbrell should be good, but it was just I felt like I needed to take him and I didn't.
I completely messed up, man. Like, why didn't I take a second baseman at my last pick? And now they're all gone. That
was why I had to take Luis Arias here, because I also needed a second baseman.
Probably because you're hosting a podcast, Frank.
Yeah,
a YouTube video, I should say.
I like Chris Taylor. I was thinking about him. Obviously, I like Luis Arias, and now they're all gone. Let's catch people up on what else happened. Shane Boz goes off the board, a very popular prospect breakout pick for this season. Ryan Mountcastle, Tyler Malley, Aviseo Garcia goes to Baseball Pods. Mike Clevenger, Luke Voigt to close out round 13. And then starting round 14, Mark Melanson, Anthony DeSclafani, Yoan Moncada, Devin Williams, who in this format, I mean, could be a huge contributor. Like, even if he's not getting saves, we're talking about elite ERA, WHIP, and strikeouts there for Devin Williams. Austin Meadows, Luis Arias to Towers, Akil Baddoo, and Miles Straw. Baseball Pods, I did want to ask you, Scott, we'll get to your pick as well. How much do you worry about Aviseo Garcia in Miami? He was great last year with Milwaukee, probably overperformed a little bit. We spoke about that on today's podcast as well. But obviously a huge negative park shift going from Milwaukee to Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he'd have gone a few rounds earlier, if he was still in, if he was still in Milwaukee. But I view him still. I don't think he's going to hurt you in batting average. I think he'll be in the 260s if he has a great season in the 270s, and he plays. He's underrated and chipping in like 10 bags every year, just about, and he'll have a good amount of homers and a good amount. I think that lineup is improving. I think Chris is right. They've got at least one trade in them. There's other Marlins on the board who I think are positioned to take a step forward offensively, and I also think they've had a lot of bad luck with injuries there. So I think and Chris knows this because we've talked about it on Twitter. I think the Marlins are a team that could be really dangerous if a couple things break their way and they make the right trade or two. I think they need at least one more core offensive player, and they've got enough pitchers to get 3 of them and still have 7 good starters.
Yeah, and one thing that's worth noting about Aviseo Garcia is he had the best expected stats of his career last season.
Yeah.
You know, his average exit velocity, his max exit velo, his barrel rate, his hard hit rate were all career bests. 278 XBA, 514 X slugs. So, you know, he is someone who the BABIP's going to play a part in how much he contributes in batting average, but I do think there's a chance he could be like a 280 hitter. And you're going to get 20 plus home runs if he stays healthy. Runs and RBI, they're not going to be elite, but I do think he's, you know, a perfectly useful starting outfielder, even in a 3 outfielder league.
All right. So with my 2 picks here, I go with Sean Manaea and Marcell Ozuna. For those watching who are wondering, well, Frank, you had Eddie Rosario. You were talking about him last time. Why didn't you take him? I just felt like I needed more power on my team. So I think Rosario is a fine pick. I think he can hit, you know, around 25 home runs, maybe chip in some like 8 to 10 steals, something like that. But I just felt like I needed more power. So I was debating Jorge Soler, Marcell Ozuna, but ultimately go with Ozuna. If you don't want to draft Ozuna for obvious reasons, have no problem completely fading him if you're in that camp. Totally fine. Sean Manaea, I wrote about him in my Sleepers 1.0. Feels completely undervalued right now. The surface numbers were not great last year, but a 20.3% K- walk rate, 3.62 Sierra. Those both ranked 16th among qualified starting pitchers last year. I think he probably winds up on another team, you know, maybe has a better opportunity for wins this upcoming season. I like Sean Manaea. I feel like he's just part of that glob, and people are just like, I don't want to take Sean Manaea. Like, he's Sean Manaea. Like, who cares? But he actually did some really good things last year, and I'm kind of excited about him. After Marcell Ozuna, Luis Severino goes, Sonny Gray, and then Luis Garcia. Scott, we haven't checked in on your pitchers in a while, so let's see how this is.
I got 6 starting pitchers now, so my lineup is full.
You actually did take Wainwright. Look at you.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it goes Charlie Morton, Justin Verlander, Chris Bassett, Adam Wainwright. Oh, I skipped Ranger Suarez. Ranger Suarez is my number 3. All right, let me do it again. Charlie Morton, Justin Verlander, Ranger Suarez, Chris Bassett, Adam Wainwright, Luis Garcia. So those top 55 I constantly refer to, they're not quite all gone yet. There are a couple more there, but right now I have 6, and I've said my goal is 7. You know, obviously I'd like my number 2 to be higher in than Justin Verlander in an ideal world, but you know, I think this pitching staff could work.
I do like that Adam Wainwright brought down the average age.
Well, Luis Garcia, I mean, with the 80 grade wetness and mustache.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Oh, Chris is leaving. No Joe Adele for Chris. Let's go. Oh man.
I've been playing chicken for like 3 rounds.
I mean, look, you can't talk about Joe Adele every single podcast, Chris, and wait that long, man. You were, you're right. You were playing chicken and you got burnt, unfortunately. Joe Ryan goes off the board, and then Joe Adele there as well. What are you going to do now, Chris? Who are you going to take?
Should take his better teammate, Brandon Marsh.
Ooh, burn. I can't tell if Chris Towers, do you know that your mic is muted, or are you just that?
I was saying bad words. That's not true. I just said butts.
Are you going to time out? No, there you go. All right. So you miss out on one of your guys. You get another guy that you like. It all kind of works out, I guess, right?
No.
Oh, man. Nice. Full tilt. By the way, we only have 81 likes. There are 129 people watching. Now, I can't tell if they're just purposely not liking this video because they just don't want Scott on the podcast next week.
Maybe it's bad. Maybe they don't like it.
Oh,
It's entirely possible.
yeah.
I think they're all protest voting that Chris didn't get Joe Adell.
No matter what reason, whether it's Chris didn't get Joe Adell, whatever it might be, hit us with some likes here. Now it's 82, slowly climbing. We've got 133 people watching. We appreciate all of you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to do a lot of this here in the off season, at least one mock draft live stream per week. And moving forward, all of our full-length podcasts are going to be streamed weeknights as well. So we started that up on Sunday. We went last night as well. And moving forward, we'll kind of mix in these mock drafts along with our full-length podcast. So subscribe, tap the notification bell. You get notified every time we go live here on YouTube. All right, what else happened here? Brandon Belts, we get back-to-back San Francisco Giants. Michael Kopeck goes. And then Yuli Gurriel goes to Baseball Pods here. And let's check out the team. Let's see how this is shaping out. But look, if you needed batting average, it's a perfect pick, right? It makes sense to grab you.
He's almost like there are certain Kopeck is who I would have taken because I think he's a differentiator at this point. But like Gurriel is like going to carry me in batting average in some ways. And like there's a lot of people here who will give me like 260, 25, 75, 75. He's going to give me 290, a little bit less on the power, but I think I've got it in other places.
All right. Yeah. Let's check back. I know Gurriel fell off as the season went along last year in terms of power, but man, he hit 319 across 530 at bats. 15 homers, 83 runs, 81 RBI. So, power is down a little bit, but the counting stats should be good. And one of the premier batting average contributors there in the league in Yuli Gurriel. Alex Verdugo, another one. If you need batting average, he's going to give it to you. 280, 290 plus. Should score some runs at the top of that Red Sox lineup as well. And then we see Gary Sanchez here to close out round 15. Michael Kopeck, Scott, we haven't got your thoughts on Kopeck all offseason. Chris and I spoke about him a little bit the other day. I feel like this is probably his ideal format too, because you don't need a lot of innings and you could wind up with elite ratios and a ton of strikeouts. So what do you think about Kopeck specifically in this format?
I don't really have well-formed thoughts on Michael Kopeck because my presumption is he's transitioning to the rotation this year, right? And I just have no idea how that's going to go. I mean, in theory, he should be good. I imagine his innings will be severely limited, but that might be more through periods of pulling him back as opposed to just having him go 4 innings every time out. So there's just a lot of question marks there. I think at this stage of the draft, you just want upside at starting pitcher. It's a fine way to go, but I don't really have a concrete idea of what his 2022 is going to look like.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, he pitched 69 in the third innings last year, and he bounced around different roles for the White Sox. Multi-inning reliever, setup man. He was used as a fireman reliever at some points. He started 4 games. He looked really good in those 4 games that he started. My guess is he got to about 70 innings. I think 100. I think he could get up to 100, maybe 110. I read a quote from Rick Hahn, the GM there with the White Sox, that they acknowledge, they're going to give him an opportunity to start, but they want him fresh deeper into the season and for a postseason run. So that kind of tells me like he's going to be on a limitation at some point. He'll start more games this year, but I don't know that it'll be more than like 10 or 12 if we're being completely honest there. All right, after Gary Sanchez went Josh Donaldson, Frank Schwindel, Frankie 2 hits, and then Trey Mancini. So we see a run on some corner infielders. Garrett Whitlock, Alex Kirilloff, and Eduardo Rodriguez goes to Chrissy Poo. That's Chris Towers, by the way. Trey Mancini, Baseball Pods. We haven't really talked about him much this offseason. The power kind of faded as the season went along, but I mean, the guy was coming back from cancer. I think it's like a pretty, fair explanation for why he would kind of be more fatigued as the season went on. The first half was amazing though. So, if he builds up that stamina, I think we probably won't see the breakout Mancini again, but I think there's a chance that he's better than he was last season.
Yeah, and I think there's like everyone's like, oh, the Orioles are moving the fences back, and when you look at the difference in projections, that was like a 1 home run difference for like someone like Mancini. So I think that's pushing his price down a little bit. I agree completely. I think, coming back from cancer, I imagine you're going to be fatigued. I imagine you're going to be fatigued anyway in the second half of the season, but he talked a little bit about that last year. And so I imagine he'll be back to close to full health. I think he's like 260 to 270. Another one of those guys like 25 to 30, 80, whatever, plug it in, go to sleep. Gonna, make sure to, he's a good backup for me in case, Yuli's kind of old. So gives me a little first base protection there. I think nice little security blanket.
All right. After we saw Garrett Whitlock, Alex Kirilloff, Eduardo Rodriguez, we see Andrew Vaughn, John Gray, and Scotty, you go with Matt Chapman. Now, I know he is not your starting third baseman. He's one of your utility bats?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's what he slots in as right now. He was the last third baseman that I have any real hope for. I mean, unless you want to get into like the Josh Young, Jose Miranda prospect class. Any real hope for him being a viable starter and potentially a really good one, potentially like a 40 homer guy. And, I felt like I needed some Adalberto Mondesi insurance there. I wasn't going to break my neck to get it, but Chapman lasting to this point, I think it's a reasonable time to take advantage of it. And yeah, he could possibly, if he does have this bounce back season that I think he's capable of, another year removed from hip surgery, then sure, he'll be perfectly fine slotted in my utility spot. But if not, there are other fish in the sea.
All right. I finally took a second baseman. I'm going to go with Colton Wong. I was debating a few different names there. I was looking at my team, trying to figure out what are my needs. Still think I needed a little bit of power, but Colton Wong, rock solid. I mean, 15-15 guy. If he stays healthy, I think there's some real potential in terms of runs scored as well. Can he push 90 plus? I think that's possible. He just has to stay on the field there in Milwaukee. But his first season there was very good. So perfectly fine with Colton Wong. Well, let me rehash that. No, I don't want Colton Wong as my starting second baseman, but at this point in the draft, I'm fine taking him at this point. And then I'm going to take another closer. But honestly, there's some question marks. Is Camilo Doval the closer for the Giants? Even if he's not in this format, I think that he'll give you a good ERA. Maybe the whip is a little questionable. Strikeouts, I think, should be really, really strong. So this is like, we'll take a shot at this point. And if he is the closer, like there's obviously big upside there. If not, like whatever. I'm
yeah. There's no reliever you could draft now that you feel like has any great assurances of keeping the role. But just based on where the Giants finished last year, I mean, Doval was in line for it, so that's the presumption going in. I'm going to make a similar pick here with Scott Barlow of the Royals.
Okay.
And hopefully he'll be a viable save source for me. But, we're just taking stabs now. There's only like, if you include Kimbrel, there's only 13 relievers maybe who you feel really strongly are going to get every opportunity to save as many games as possible. And more will emerge over the course of the season, but those roles have obviously become especially fluid in recent years.
Now, I was going to take.
You could say you set the bar low.
Oh, God.
With Scott Barlow, there's another Barlow that's even lower.
Oh man, I tweeted this out the other day. I was doing a draft. Someone selected Joe Barlow. I thought it said Joe Burrow. I was like, wrong sport. Man, it's like after that game, I was like, geez, man, my mind is all over football, and rightfully so. It was an awesome game to watch. Here in round 17, let's see what else happens. Julio Rodriguez, one of the top prospects in the game. I believe, Scott, when you wrote him up, you said he has a chance to break camp with the team. We'll see what happens there with the Mariners. If not, I think we see Julio Rodriguez at some point this season. Kyle Gibson, an innings eater here for the Phillies. Scott Barlow goes to Scott White. Lou Trevino, I think as of now, probably shaping up as the closer for the A's, but they could trade Lou Trevino. There's lots of talks they could trade everyone on their team, so they could still sign someone. We'll see what happens. Spencer Torkelson, another prospect name there, should, I would imagine, join the Tigers relatively quickly here into the season. And Chris, you take Ty France, Chris Towers, that is. I know you didn't need a second baseman, so what do you like about one Ty France?
He'd just been kind of sitting at the top of the hitter pile for a while. And I feel like with the team that I've got, I could use some batting average help. I've got Dalton Varsho might hit 240. Jose Ramirez might only hit 260. Stanton, Judge, you never know what you're going to get with those guys. So a little bit of, batting average stability won't hurt. The hitter options have certainly thinned out at this point.
Yes, they have.
And I once again on rosters like this where it's tough to cut guys sometimes because they're so good. Like just finding a place for them to play first base, second base. When you can get that, and even though we don't have corner here or middle infield, I just love that multi-position eligibility.
Yeah, him and Arias give me a little flexibility, and even Varsho, if I'm desperate, has that outfield. So it does. That's always a nice little thing to have. It shouldn't dramatically change your valuation of any player, but eligibility, especially in an era of 10-day ILs, and I mean, I have to imagine COVID's still going to be something of an issue, based on what we've seen in other sports.
Heard they just postponed or said Tout was not the Tout Wars draft.
Yeah, Tout Wars not happening in person. That's disappointing.
Yep.
I'm in New York, so if anybody's coming into town, I'll hang out anyway. But yeah, that's flexibility is always a good thing to have. There are definitely my Tout Wars team last year. I was in the OBP and Games Started League. I think or Quality Starts. I can't remember what it was.
Innings pitch. I think it's innings pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. That league, there were definitely a lot of times when I wish I had more flexibility, and then there were weeks because of the unique way that the rosters work in Tout Wars, especially. You might end up stuck starting someone who's not going to play. That's just the way it works sometimes. So flexibility is a nice thing to have.
All right. After you took Ty France, we see Cabrian Hayes. Jorge Soler finally goes off the board. Debated taking him myself. Tanner Houck goes to Baseball Pods. Charlie Blackman, O'Neill Cruz, and Chris, Baseball Pods, that is. Tanner Houck. I think he's very similar to Michael Kopeck, what we said earlier, where specifically in this format, you don't really worry as much about innings pitched, especially at this point in the draft. But in terms of like ratios and strikeouts, another one just goes to Aaron Ashby. I think he's kind of in that category as well. He should be really good, man. So I really like the pick on Tanner Houck there. What do you like about him?
Well, first of all, I live in New England, and it's got like Tana Hawk's one of like the best New England accents of all time. Like that, it doesn't get better than that when you're down at the Dunkin' Donuts with Donnie. But I also think as you said, he's got the potential to break out and become something special. When I listen to some of the best prospect minds, they think he has that ability to take a leap. And at this point in the draft, like if he doesn't work out, I'm gonna get rid of him, in a couple of weeks. But maybe he does take the leap and he becomes an ace. He has that potential within him to at least be like a number two starter in the very least.
Yeah, the slider already one of the best in the game last season. We saw a 16.2% swinging strike rate on the pitch with a 159 batting average against. Watch him pitch side by side with Chris Sale. It's like a mirror image. So,
and I think there's something there, and I think like that's something that's one of the reasons I believe in him long term is he's going to learn from the best. So I think that's really awesome. I also just grabbed Brendan Rodgers just now.
That was you, huh?
Yeah, middle infield eligible. He's old enough now that it's like the Rockies. It's like they have a really high bar at the amusement park when you want to take a ride. If you want to get on the field, you have to be at least like 25 in Colorado. So now he's old enough to play for the Rockies, and he's still got all the same skills that he had. It seems like second base, shortstop gives me the flexibility. Probably 20 home runs, nothing special there, but a good batting average, all around productivity.
Yeah, no, I've been eyeballing him for a few rounds. Of course, we know how high I am on Brendan Rodgers this year. I'm finding he rarely meets a need for me. Even in roto drafts, I usually have my middle infield spot filled before the appropriate time to tank Brendan Rodgers. So he kind of ends up being like a depth upside pick for me. And so I'm not very early on, of course, but I haven't been ending up with him very much so far. Though if he had lasted to this next pick here in round 18, I would have taken him for my bench.
No, Chris. Come on, man. You took Tristan McKenzie from me. That's not cool. So whatever. It's fine. I'll figure something.
You're welcome.
But I've got a few players that I'm eyeing here too. We'll see who makes it to me. I was debating Brendan Rodgers versus Colton Wong. Rodgers might have made more sense for my team if I needed a little bit more pop, which I think I did. He hits the ball on the ground too much. If he changes that launch angle a little bit, we could be talking about 25 plus home runs for Rodgers. But yeah, I mean, that's the main concern for him at this point, and staying healthy. He's got to stay on the field.
I also think Rockies hitters in a daily league have a little advantage. When I was thinking about Chris taking CJ Cron earlier, I was like, oh man, in a daily league, when he's on the road, you're just going to bench him or somebody better. So I can do that, and he plays second and short. So I have 4 lineup spots to plug him into.
All right. After Brendan Rodgers, Adam Duvall goes. John means business. Tristan McKenzie goes to Chris. How dare you? I love Tristan McKenzie. Tony Gonsolin goes. So that's like a really interesting run of pitchers there where, I mean, this range is awesome, dude. Like Means, McKenzie, Gonsolin. I love that, man. Like I'm about it. Josh Young goes. Prospect there with the Texas Rangers. That's spelled Jung, by the way. Aaron Savali goes to Scotty here. So you get another starting pitcher. And then Patrick Wisdom. Scott, were you looking at any of those other starting pitchers that went before Savale, or were you dead set on getting him?
I probably would have taken Means over him if he had still been available. Tony Gonsolin I have on my breakouts list this year. So, I mean, there are several guys I would have considered there. I kind of actually disagree with the idea that volume doesn't matter at this stage of the draft. I mean, you still want wins, you still want strikeouts. Those are 2 of the 4 categories that starting pitchers can contribute. And if you're not getting innings, you're not getting those either. So, Savale, he missed some time with injury last year, but start per start, he was an innings eater with a low whip. The ERA was a little on the high side. It's strange. I feel like I've become the high guy on Savale after being one of the low guys on him the past 2 years. I thought he looked pretty good last year. I'm not sure why everybody's backing down from him.
How the turntables, Scott.
I know.
You are the guy on Aaron Savale now. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I kept waiting I thought Savale could take this next step. I was in on him last year, and it just hasn't happened. And the underlying numbers are pretty bad with him, too. So it's just like.
They've always been pretty bad. That's why I haven't liked them. But, yeah, I guess maybe everybody was waiting for a next step, and now they're satisfied that it's not coming. But, he's a pretty solid pitcher just as he is.
I think that's a great pick. He's that post, like everyone wanted him to be something he wasn't, and he wasn't, but it doesn't mean he won't be this year. And Cleveland just knows how to develop pitchers. And the other thing, and they let their pitchers pitch deep into games, and so you're just going to get great innings and solid ratio. It's an underrated aspect of their ratios.
All right, yeah, I finally took Eddie Rosario. I was debating him like, I don't know, 6 rounds ago.
You've been selling them to us for like 4 rounds.
The thing is, like, all the guy does is print money. Like, I know last year he was like beat up and he wasn't as good. I mean, he turned it on in the postseason, but like when he's healthy, I still think he's going to be a starter somewhere. We'll see if he winds up back with the Braves or somewhere else. But I think he's solid. I think he's rock solid. Like, 265, 270, 25 homers, 8-10 steals. I mean, he's solid. And then Gleyber Torres, he's going to get second base eligibility. So, my second base position is not great. I have Colton Wong. So, at this point, why not? 217 is the pick for Gleyber Torres. We'll see if I don't think he'll ever get back to the player he was back in 2019, but I think he's got to be better than what we've seen recently. So take a little shot on him there. I have no idea what the Yankees are going to do at shortstop. Andrelton Simmons coming soon. I mean, that's what it sounds like is going to happen. And if that's the case, then Gleyber once again will start at second base. Next up, we see Taylor Rodgers, Jordan Hicks, and Hunter Renfroe go to Scotty there. And Scott, I know you've kind of been pounding the drum for Hunter Renfroe this offseason. It's not like you drafted him earlier. Right? Like he's going pick 220, and it just kind of feels like he's disrespected, even though he's in Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's just one of those. I don't really get it. 31 homers, 96 RBI last year. Got his strikeout rate down to 22%, very respectable. And now he's going to Milwaukee, as you said, like the kingmaker for hitters, other than I guess Colorado. But we see more of these kind of fringe types go to Milwaukee in recent years and emerge as something more. I don't know that Renfroe could really improve on last year's stats, but I think he has a good chance of living up to them. And that was good enough to make him at least top 30 outfielder last season.
After you took Renfroe, Brandon Crawford finally goes. Again, there's no risk, right? Like, we're not buying what Brandon Crawford did last year, but at this point,
You don't have to.
Why not?
You're literally not buying what he did last year.
No, you're not.
He's old man Dansby Swanson. It works. It plays.
The Giants just found a way, man. They've done a great job with Crawford, with Evan Longoria, a bunch of their hitters recently. So we'll see. We'll see what Crawford could do, but it's worth taking a shot this late in the draft. Nate Pearson with the Toronto Blue Jays. Don't know if he'll be in the rotation or in the bullpen to start. Michael Conforto, another one. I mean, he's just going so late. It doesn't really matter where he winds up.
He's kind of the anti-Hunter Renfroe, where he just had one bad season. All of a sudden, he's worth as much as Hunter Renfroe after one good season. So yeah,
I wish I had that's a great pick, Chris. I mean, Conforto was a 5th round, 6th round pick last year, and
yeah, I mean, he'd been a top 100 guy for 3 years in a row or something like that in terms of ADP.
Just to play devil's advocate, I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with this value, but he is one of, when I was comparing the guys who I feel like suffered from the new ball because their exit velocities just aren't up to snuff. And Conforto was one of the prime examples of that. So I'm afraid the new ball ruined him, long story short. But
there's going to be a new ball this year.
You know what? You're not wrong.
What I would say is, his ex-WOBA was 350. The year before, it was 355. The year before that, it was 366. So I don't know how much Michael Conforto has really changed or how much anything has changed around Michael Conforto. Or was it just that, I don't know what the analogy is. He rolled 7s 2 times in a row or whatever. I don't really know what craps is. 7s is bad, right? But
I thought 7s was good. I don't.
It's good it's good and bad.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Which makes sense. We're talking about variance. He just had the bad side of the variance. Maybe.
All right. I don't know anything about craps. That probably doesn't surprise anyone. There's a lot of things I don't know anything about.
I spent a few hours in playing craps in Vegas during FSGA back in 2020, but I don't really remember it.
I like
it's the funnest game. It's the funnest game when you have a big crowd and you're not willing to lose. You're willing to lose a couple $100.
Yeah,
you got to figure out how to do it. It seems like it should be your guys' types of game. It's all about odds and analysis and data and analytics.
I just remember the dealer telling me not to make a bet that I kept making, and it kept winning. And he kept being like, "You shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea." And I just kept doing. I mean, it was like 4 a.m. I had been playing blackjack for like 3 hours before.
Nice.
That. But that's really all I remember of my craps experience. So I literally have no idea how the rules work, despite having played it.
All right, the rebel Chris Towers there. We are 4 likes away from having Scott on the podcast next week. And admittedly,
come on, we can do it.
And only 3 rounds of the draft left.
I really want Scott on the podcast next week. So guys, please help us out here. We're 98 people watching, 96 likes.
Okay, fine. Sure. Let's bring out the big guns. If we get to 100, I won't be on the podcast next week.
No, stop. we need everyone together. We need the band back together. So anyone else who hasn't liked the podcast, yes, please do it. I see us up to 98. Let's see if we can get those 2 more here. Lock in 100. Let's catch people up on a few more picks here. Baseball Pods, love the pick of Will Myers. Scott, I know he was one of those who was much better with the juice ball, but at this point,
he's kind of weird though because his exit velocities have been all over the place in his career.
Yeah, I love the value that you're getting him at. He could be a 25-15 guy, and it would not surprise me. Jesus Aguilar goes Hyunjin Ryu, and then starting off around 20. Oh crap, I'm on the clock. Connor Joe, Nestor Cortez, Alex Wood, Huascar Ynoa, lots of pitchers here. Lucas Sims, Jose Urquidy, Gregory Soto, Nick Madrigal, Dylan Floro, Tarek Skubal, and Dylan Carlson. Scott, what pick did you make? Dylan Floro, you talk about him. I'll make some picks.
Okay. Well, Chris said he probably shouldn't be drafted, and I drafted him. No, it was interesting. As Chris was making that explanation, this was in round 14. Mark Melancon went off the board, and I thought, well, what's different about Mark Melancon? Especially now that he's with the Diamondbacks. I mean, I feel like the team context for Floro is actually better. Melancon has more job security, granted, but you're not You know, if a closer loses his job, you're just not going to roster him anymore, right? Does he belong in the lineup? You know, I feel like he does. I feel like it's worth competing in that one category. I understand he's not going to help in anything else, but that's kind of the assumptions with closers. I think what makes like a Craig Kimbrell or, you know, you go even higher in than that, like a, you know, Liam Hendricks or Josh Hader, what makes them worth paying up for those who argue that they're worth paying up for is that, oh, they can actually help in categories other than saves. So I don't know. I was a little taken aback by the Floro isn't even worth drafting comment.
Look, you can plug in a different reliever who's just a saves candidate. You know, it's nothing personal against Dylan Floro.
Okay, but you're saying that phenotype of reliever, yes. It's just you don't really put any stock in Floro because he's, you know, the Floros come and go. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha.
So at my pick, I went with Jordan Montgomery and Carlos Carrasco. Just wanted some pitchers with some decent upside here to round out the rotation, throw them on the bench for now. The way that I typically play head-to-head categories in a league with 25 innings minimum is that I'm going to start my studs. I'm going to start my Logan Webb, my Zach Wheeler. I'm not going to force the guys on my bench into the lineup unless it's a good matchup. Again, as long as we get over that 25 innings threshold, like anything after that is gravy. Obviously, we want some more strikeouts and wins, but like, you know, we're going to be cognizant of the matchups there. So I'll play those guys when the time says that it's right. And typically I like to have at least 4 relievers in my lineup. So I will be drafting at least one more. I have Edwin Diaz. I have Will Smith. I have Camilo Doval. Even if the next one doesn't give me saves, I'm fine with that. I want relievers in my lineup every day that could potentially help with strikeouts, ratios, so on and so forth. So that's what we'll be looking for with my next pick. After that, Kyle Lewis, Corey Kluber. Scotty goes with the old Zach Greinke. I mean, Scott, the average age of this pitching staff. I mean,
hey man, I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Give me the innings. Give me, you know, if there's any chance of them being good still, and I know people are doubting Zach Greinke at this stage of his career. Still had a 117 whip last year.
Exactly. I think people are way low on him for no reason.
I will admit, Scott, you've kind of talked me into Zach Greinke a little bit in that draft and hold league that I was talking about earlier. I think I took him in round 23 or 24. This is a 12-team league, so he was my SP7 at that point. So
that's the thing. Like I could definitely play the pessimist on Greinke. I see what there is to be concerned about, but it's not a clear, like, remember Felix Hernandez at the end of his career? He was clearly toast. And I don't think there are quite those red flags for Zach Greinke. And the fact he's going for next to nothing, well, like, why not?
Part of it for me is just, we did this with Zach Greinke 6 years ago. You know,
true.
He was 33. We were like, well, he's done.
Yeah.
He's done now. Zach Greinke is finished. And, you know, then we got a half decade of elite production left in him. I don't think he's going to do that again necessarily, but he's not a guy who needs great stuff. You know, he's such a good pitcher, you know, in the capital P sense that if anybody could figure it out, it's like Joey Votto.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody can figure out how to overcome a diminished skill set, it's the guy who might be the smartest in the game at, you know, thinking about it.
And he's probably going to go to a team that's contending and be, have an impact. And I don't understand. He's one of the players I really don't understand why he's fallen so far. He didn't do anything that bad.
I think part of it is that he's just a free agent right now too, Chris. So I think as a result of that, some people might be wondering, well, is he going to play at all? If he was going to retire, I think he would have done it already. So I think he's going to pitch. Scott,
I'll just say that.
It's never wise to think along with Zach Greinke for what it's worth.
That is fair. That is fair.
Zach Plesac is going ahead of Zach Greinke. If there's anyone fantasy players should be mad at for 2021, it should be Zach Plesac.
Oh, I'm furious. I'm done with Zach Plesac. That's not happening again. So you're right, Chris. Furious. I'm out.
I mean, he's not good at taking off a shirt.
Guy broke his hand last year, hand, taking off his shirt. It's just a weird situation. Scotty, you mentioned the possibility of Zach Greinke going to the Braves on last night's podcast, and now it's it's in my head. I'm like, yes, I want it to happen. I want Greinke to go to the Braves.
I don't think that was actually on the podcast. I think that was just us talking beforehand. But
yeah, you might be right because I asked you about Huascar Ynoa. So,
it just seems like they've been linked to him forever and have never been able to work it out. And now it seems like, there's no time where it's easier to get Zach Greinke than right now.
All right, what else?
They got to take care of business with Freddie Freeman first, though.
Armand Marquez at this point in the draft in a daily lineups league, man, I wish I had done that. RJ's made some great picks.
Right. Well, let's see. Let's see
he
what
stole
RJ's
Paul Sewald like 3 rounds ago too.
It feels like 3 weeks ago. By the way, we have got 100 likes, over 100 likes. Scott, you will be on the podcast next week. Everybody, ring the bell. Scotty's going to be here next week.
I really think you need to bring Michael Caine back next week too.
No, we didn't get to 150 likes. Too bad.
Well, Scott,
sorry.
Whatever happens after the live stream, people can still like this video as they stumble across it. So if we get to 150, Michael Caine might just have to make an appearance next week.
Those weren't the rules. All right, I'm going for.
Frank makes the rules. That's what I heard about this podcast. So.
I wish. I basically did. You're right about that. All right, so let's see what else happened here. Some great picks happening. I started to pull up RJ White's team. We'll talk about RJ White's team tomorrow on the podcast when we recap this draft. Jesus Sanchez, fantastic pick, Chris. Love it. I mean, for someone who's like a former top-ish prospect, to get him at pick 255, he was great final 2 months of the season last year once he returned from COVID, so I'm all about it. Jamer Candelario goes, Germán Marquez, Ramon Laureano, Alec Boehm, why not? Take a shot at this point. Jesus Luzardo, pick 260. Yes, let's do it. Scott, I mean...
I love it.
Look, if you want
I hate drafting with Scott late in drafts because I love all the old pitchers that he likes. Like I wanted last time, and I was hoping I'd get Hendricks on the way back. He's taking them all.
Hendricks isn't even that old.
He's old enough.
It feels like he's been around for 20 years. Man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on the clock. All right, Scott, talk about Kyle Hendricks.
I mean, it's kind of the same rationale as Greinke. Just the stuff didn't change that much. I think probably he was less precise with his location, and that led to him getting throttled off and on. Because remember, he had a quality start streak in the middle of the season. It was like 13 starts or something like that. And Kyle Hendricks is back. Look. And then he kind of fell flat on his face at the end of the year again. But bottom line is, like, he hasn't lost stuff. I mean, he's been throwing 88 all along. So it wouldn't take anything at all for him to recapture the form that we knew him to have the previous 5 years. Been very reliable. So yeah, I think if you're going to go cheap at starting pitcher, as I did in this draft, you need to fill your bench with the Zach Greinke's and Kyle Hendricks of the world, rather than take a shot at an upside guy who's probably not going to give you volume and really his utility is going to be really limited in that way.
Well, Scott, what do you think about the possibility of, I obviously you've leaned all the way into these volume pitchers at this point. What about mixing it up? Like for every one volume pitcher you take, maybe take a higher upside, a K per inning kind of pitcher. Obviously you didn't do that in this one, but what do you think about that idea, that strategy?
I mean, it kind of just depends where the value is. Obviously, you're not counting on all of these guys coming through for you. And you have to know pretty early in the season, or else you're going to end up dropping somebody if it's going to work or not. So I don't know. I just rather gamble on guys where I can remove that variable of workload. I know teams aren't going to, mess with how deep they're going into games. They're not going to move them in and out of the rotation. If they're available, they're going to pitch, and we'll just see how good they are. Because I think that's less to worry about.
Can I hop in with one quick thought on that?
Scott, you have 10 seconds to pick, by the way. I wanted to make sure you knew. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
There's the why don't you focus on guys with more upside? I do think it can be easy to fall into the trap of thinking that a player who is worse or is unproven, I guess, is the way to put it, has more upside. And that's not necessarily like, yeah, the error bars are probably wider on someone like Jesus Luzardo than Zach Greinke, but I don't know if Jesus Luzardo figuring it all out is necessarily that much better than Zach Greinke having a bounce.
Zach Greinke's going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, like Zach Greinke was a top 10 pitcher 2 years ago, right? Like that. Sure. I don't expect him to be that again, but he has done that before, and I think that's something that we often fall prey to in all sports discussions. Really, is like, the young guy who hasn't been as good could have more upside than the older guy. Well, not necessarily.
And I think it's most evident at start. Like, you most clearly need to think along those lines at starting pitcher, because the old guys have a clear advantage over the young guys, and it's that workload factor where it's not many starting pitchers are being trusted to go 6+ with consistency anymore. But the Adam Wainwrights and Zach Greinke's and some of the guys I didn't take, Carlos Carrasco, Kyle Hendricks, they are. Eventually, a young guy can build up to that point. I mean, we kind of saw Corbin Burns get there just because he was so good last year, and he's not the only one. I think there were a couple others that crossed that threshold. But generally speaking, that's not how. Like, even like a Tanner Houck, even if he ends up being as good as everybody hopes he's going to be, what are his individual starts going to look like? Are they going to be impactful? Even if the ratios end up great. You got to think in terms of start by start. Is this the kind of start that's going to give me a win? Is this the kind of start that's going to give me 8 or more strikeouts? If it's only 4 innings, then you need an 18. You need 18K per 9 to get 8 strikeouts. When if it's the 6 or 7 inning guy, he only needs about a strikeout per inning.
I hear you guys, and overall, I think that these pitchers going this late, I mean, these older, kind of boring veteran arms, they are being undervalued. My thing is, I don't want to go too far the other way either. Like, Zach Greinke was still not great last year. The swinging strike rate, the strikeouts, they plummeted. So I like the idea of taking some of them, but for me personally, I think I would probably mix it up. I understand it's like a mystery box kind of thing. Like, we don't know what Tanner Houck is going to be. We don't know what Josiah Gray or Jesus Luzardo is going to be moving forward. But for me, I'd like the possibility to find out. So maybe mixing those guys in and weaving them in with like a Kyle Hendricks or a Zach Greinke. Maybe not taking all of those old guys, but just some of them, and then maybe mixing it up with some guys we just don't know what they're going to be yet. So
one counter to that is that there's clearly a finite number of these Zach Greinke, Kyle Hendricks types. And they're all going to get drafted in all likelihood. And once they're gone, they're gone.
By you. They're going to be drafted by you.
Potentially, yeah. Obviously, there's a finite number of young guys that are going to break through too. But there's a very large number of candidates to do that, right? And not all of them are going to be drafted. At this time last year, nobody was really hot on Trevor Rodgers or Carlos Rodon yet, or even really Freddie Peralta. That kind of picked up steam over the course of spring training. And, when guys start showing signs of breaking through like that, I think it makes sense to elevate them, and maybe I will mix them in more with these guys. But there are plenty of upside pitchers who weren't targeted in this draft.
Yeah, I drafted Freddie Peralta in round 24 of TGFBI last year. So it's just like we look at him now. It's like, oh yeah, of course we all knew that, and it's like, no, we didn't. We didn't draft that way. If we did,
yeah. This time last year, I looked up the ADP. Freddie Peralta was going outside the top 200. We didn't know what his role was going to be. He was going to be a reliever or a starter. I mean, more talk of that started as we got into spring training, and we found out more ultimately. So I think that it started to move the ADP a little bit, but overall, I mean, he never really got that high up. So
I am with you in general, Frank, in terms of wanting some. I like having just a little more of a potpourri of starters. I do love the old boring vets. Like, I like Alex Cobb where he's going this year. I like Alex Wood where he's going this year as well. Guys that take some shots on some older guys, but I don't try to chase upside with the early picks, but in the middle, I like taking a shot or two at a player that I think could break out.
All right. Chris, we appreciate you coming here. Again, follow him on Twitter @BaseballPods. I want to quickly run through your team because we're going to do a recap podcast of this tomorrow where I'm sure we'll talk about all of our teams quite a bit, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it before you leave here. So let's just run through the lineup. You have Will Smith at catcher, Yuli Gurriel at first base, Jazz Chisholm, Yoan Moncada, Xander Bogaerts in the infield, then Aviseo Garcia, Chris Bryant, Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield, 2 utility spots, Franmil Reyes, Trey Mancini. You might be thinking, wow, I don't know about this lineup. Well, he has Shohei Ohtani as a pitcher right now. So obviously you use him as both a hitter and as a pitcher. How about the rest of these pitchers? Yu Darvish, Walker Buehler, Kenley Jansen, Corey Knebel, Alex Wood, who you mentioned you like, Dylan Cease, Tanner Houck. So lots of upside here. And then on the bench, we have Will Myers, Brendan Rodgers, Andrew Kittredge. Could get some saves there for Tampa. Jesus Sanchez and Drew Rasmussen. Chris, what do you think about this team?
I mean, I like it. I think the thing that I wish I had gotten a third baseman a little bit earlier. I'm relying on I got Moncada and/or Bryant to play there. I still wish I had a little more upside. I love getting one of the top third basemen this year, and I failed to do that in this. But referring back to what Scott was talking about earlier, getting one of the top catchers. I think Will Smith is right there after Salvi this year. We talked about Xander earlier. I've got I think a lot of chip in speed as well as Jazz, and so like Bogart's 10 to 15, Avi 10, Chris Bryant 5 to 10, Teoscar 10 to 15. Could be a little lighter on speed than I wanted to be, but I think I've got good power, good average. I like the pitching. And then in terms of the bench, and you guys are a little bit more experts, I think, at this format than I am, but I figured having 2 relief pitchers that have super high ratios in Kittredge and Rasmussen, they may end up getting 15 or 20 saves, but they're really there for high strikeout and ratios to plug in, and getting some upside. With Jesus Sanchez on the bench, I love getting that late. And then the other thing you'll see on a lot of my teams, I definitely value multi-position eligibility. Just between Jazz, Chris Bryant, I guess Shohei, Mancini might pick some up. And then Brendan Rodgers as well. It gives me a lot of flexibility to move people in and out of the lineup and play daily matchups in a daily game. But I like it. I need a little more speed and a better third baseman.
That point about the 2 high, elite ratio relievers. If you're actually managing your lineup every day, they should be in your lineup every day.
Yep.
Almost certainly. Given the way that maybe you'll have 6 starting pitchers going one day, but more often than not, those guys will be in your lineup every day.
Yeah, this is a format
really good.
Yeah, where even if they're not giving you saves, again, like I want to draft at least 4 relievers, maybe even more than that. Even if they're not giving me saves, if they're in there every day, they're giving you strikeouts, the possibility it wins, assuming that they're good relievers. There's no shortage of like strong relievers that do not give you saves. So they're going to be out there and they're going to be able to provide strikeouts. It's just, I want to leave those guys in the lineup as much as possible. So yeah, I like to have at least 4 relievers in there. Maybe even more, depending on how many relievers you can pick up throughout the course of your draft. We're going to wrap up there, but Chris Towers, any other closing thoughts here before we get out of here?
No, I'm good.
All right. How about Scotty? Scotty, any closing thoughts?
No.
I'm saving them for
Sorry
tomorrow.
to let you down. Yeah.
No, it's fine. I just, I didn't want to wrap up without giving you guys an opportunity to talk again. So, yeah, we're gonna break it all down on tomorrow's podcast. Again, make sure you follow.
Where we will hear Michael Caine, right? Say blueberries over and over and over again. It's the best impression.
Blueberries. There you go. 1 word impression.
That was worth the entire night.
There you go.
Make sure you follow Chris on Twitter at BaseballPods. You can find his work, redraft, and dynasty content over at baseball-pods.com. Chris, we appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thanks so much. I had a great time.
All right, we're going to wrap there for Chris, for Scott. I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching this live stream edition of Fantasy Baseball Today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.